Have you ever had a neighbor who believed the world revolved around them, where every boundary you set was just another line for them to cross? Imagine walking outside to see your private dock, the one you maintain and cherish as part of your lakeside property, completely transformed into a wedding venue. White drapes, chairs, and speakers, all there without your permission. That is exactly what happened to me when Karen, a woman who had tested my patience more times than I could count, decided my dock would make the perfect stage for her son's big day. This time, however, I was ready with a plan. To really understand why this wedding day turned into something unforgettable, you need the backstory. Karen had a long history of overstepping her boundaries. She plugged her car into my Tesla charging point as if it were community property. She strolled into my garden and snipped roses whenever she felt like it, as though I had grown them just for her centerpieces. She had siphoned off my outdoor water supply for her plants when she thought no one was watching. Every time she did something like this, I tried to address it calmly and respectfully. I spoke to her directly. I spoke to our HOA board members. I even documented the incidents. But nothing changed. It was clear Karen believed she could take without asking, and she leaned on her connections within the HOA to get away with it. When I heard from my neighbor Scott Green that she was planning to host her son's wedding on my dock, I realized this was her boldest move yet. My dock is not just another piece of wood on the water. It has history with my family. It sits on my lakeside property and represents years of investment, care, and memories. For her to claim it, decorate it, and invite dozens of guests as if she owned it was not only disrespectful but a direct violation of my rights. This time I wasn't going to confront her early. This time I let her go ahead with her grand plan, all while knowing exactly what I would do when the big day came. When the wedding day finally arrived, it looked like something out of a magazine. The dock was covered in spotless decorations, chairs were lined up in neat rows, flowers draped elegantly, and a sound system was playing soft music. The sun reflected beautifully across the lake as Karen's guests gathered, smiles wide, unaware of the storm about to come. From a distance, it looked like the perfect wedding, but the one thing everyone seemed to forget was that the entire celebration sat on property that was never hers to use. This is where the story speaks to a larger truth. Homeowners across America face situations like this every day. It might not always be a wedding, but it often involves people taking liberties with what isn't theirs. In HOA-controlled neighborhoods especially, there are always a few individuals who believe shared governance means shared ownership. They cut corners. They misuse amenities. They take from others simply because they think power within the HOA gives them the right. In reality, it does not. And in this case, Karen crossed a line so obvious it couldn't be ignored. I waited until everyone was settled, the vows were beginning, and the dock was packed with guests in their best clothes. While the music played, I walked over quietly, pulled out the knife I had brought, and cut the thick ropes anchoring my dock to the shoreline. At first, it went unnoticed. The dock drifted slowly, barely perceptible, as though nothing was happening. But within minutes, whispers turned to gasps, gasps turned to screams, and panic spread as the entire wedding party realized they were gently floating away into the lake. I stood there calmly, watching Karen stare back at me, her face a mix of shock and rage. And I simply smiled. Everyone wobbled, tried to keep balance, and clung to one another as the dock floated farther from land. It was chaos in formal attire. Guests got wet, decorations collapsed, music cut off, and Karen's perfectly planned moment dissolved into panic and laughter from those watching from shore. Thankfully, no one was hurt. I made sure of that ahead of time by keeping medical equipment on standby at my nearby lake cabin. I had thought through every scenario because my intention was never to endanger people, only to make a very clear point. Karen had taken liberties with my property one too many times, and this was the day she learned boundaries exist for a reason. It is easy to laugh about the spectacle of a wedding drifting away into a lake, but the deeper lesson here matters far more. What Karen failed to understand is something that homeowners everywhere need to know. HOA boards and community members often overstep their authority, but the governance of an HOA does not erase private property rights. There is a clear difference between shared amenities and land that is deeded to an individual. No board member, no neighbor, no self-important resident can claim what is legally yours. Far too often, homeowners accept small intrusions because they do not want to stir conflict. They shrug it off when someone parks illegally, takes plants, borrows electricity, or stretches a rule. But the danger of ignoring these small acts is that they grow bigger and bolder. Karen never would have believed she could hold an entire wedding on my dock if her smaller trespasses hadn't been tolerated before. When little boundaries are ignored, bigger boundaries start to crumble. This is not about cutting ropes or ruining weddings. It is about holding firm when someone oversteps. It is about knowing your HOA's limitations and knowing that your home is not community property just because you live under shared governance. For me, standing up that day meant the cycle of Karen's entitlement finally stopped. The image of that dock floating away is something I will never forget. It was chaotic, it was dramatic, and in a strange way, it was poetic. The bride and groom will forever have a wedding story unlike any other. Karen will forever have the reminder that boundaries exist, and they must be respected. And me, I had the satisfaction of finally making a stand that words alone had failed to deliver in the past. When you live in an HOA community, conflicts are inevitable. There will always be neighbors who push limits, and there will always be questions about where HOA authority ends and private ownership begins. The lesson here is not to provoke drama, but to recognize the power of standing up for your property and your rights. If you let things slide again and again, eventually you will find yourself at the mercy of people who believe rules don't apply to them. What happened that day was a wake-up call, not just for Karen, but for everyone in our neighborhood who thought HOA influence could justify personal trespass. It could not. It never will. My dock floated away with their big celebration, but it also carried away the illusion that she could take whatever she wanted without consequences. So if you found this story entertaining and insightful, I invite you to support this channel. Hit that like button if you believe in communities built on respect and transparent leadership. And subscribe to HOA Files, where we not only share stories like this, but also explore the real tactics people use to reclaim their power from overreaching HOA control. This is where everyday homeowners stand tall, draw their lines, and remind everyone that respect is not optional.